They'll tell us that if you do this, your breast will grow faster. If you do this, so some of us will go as far as putting tissue, buying tiny underwears, and then putting tissue in it. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. I'm so glad to have you here. Always, thank you for sharing to people who you know that this will be beneficial to. Thank you, I appreciate it. Today, we're going to be looking at how to raise a content child, or how to raise contented children. Imagine going out and then you have a child who every little thing that pops in their way, they just go, "Daddy, I want this, Mommy, I want this." And the times you don't get it or you're not able to get it, they just go and start whining and crying and hitting themselves on the floor and disgracing themselves and probably embarrassing you. Would you like that? Nah, I wouldn't like that. Today, let's talk about what causes discontentment and how to actually help your child or your children to be content. What is discontentment? Discontentment is a feeling of, dissatisfaction or unhappiness about your current situation. And just like adults actually feel discontent sometimes, do you know that children actually feel discontent too for various reasons? Absolutely. Some of the things that could cause discontent in children would be: 1, unmet needs. When their basic needs are not met. Needs for love, for security, for attention, for autonomy. Autonomy within the context of being age specific. Of course, that kind of child will be discontent because the child will be yearning for, that vacuum to be filled. 2, another thing that causes discontentment with children is comparison to others. When children begin to compare themselves to other children, sometimes children can come home and say, "Oh, that Mommy, can you give me noodles to school?" To be very honest, one of my children have come home and I think both of them at different times have come home and they're like, "Mom, can you give me noodles to school?" And I'm like, the question that comes to my mind is, which of your classmates brought noodles or has been bringing noodles? Yes, because that's what happens. A lot of times when they see other children do things, sometimes they want to do it, they want to give it a try, or they aspire to do it, and I make it known to them that just the way they're feeling about that, the other person too is feeling probably the same way about them. Personally, noodles is not a thing for me to give my children to school. I have my reasons, and if you like it, if it works for you, fantastic. Sometimes children compare themselves to their peers, they compare themselves to their siblings, so that causes some form of discontent. I remember my son coming home one day to me and telling me that, "Mommy, do you know, I really feel like cutting fresh molo." Hey, do you know what fresh molo is? Fresh molo is when you barb your hair completely and then everything is shining and your skin is showing. I'm like, what? Because he has never ever cut fresh molo. So first, I can't even picture him having that fresh molo haircut. Like, I just feel like, nah, it won't look nice. You're handsome like this already, But then I asked him, I said, "Who actually does this fresh molo in your class?" And he mentioned the name of his classmates. "It looks nice. I like it. I just want to try it." I said, "You want to explore?" I said, "Number 1, you see that your friend that you're talking about, he loves your haircut as well." Yes, just as much as you admire, you love his haircut, he loves your haircut. So why not just admire it and leave it at that, rather than desiring it or feeling some form of discontent that because you want that. And I told him, I said, if I cut it, the hair, you are going to have how many weeks before the hair grows? And you cannot wear a cap to school just in case you don't like it, So I told him the pros and the cons. It's okay to admire people, but you do not have to desire what they want. And I remember one of those times that I took him to the barbing salon and I told the papa, "Please, Hassan, cut fresh molo for my son." And he just went, No, I don't want it. And I'm like, "Why?" "But you have been advocating, you have been a wonderful advocate for fresh molo." And okay, he's actually laughing in the background because it's close by. And that day he was like, "No, I don't want it." So I think after that day, I delivered myself and he delivered himself from the desire for fresh molo. When he grows up and he decides that he wants to do his fresh molo, by that time he'll be old enough to make his own decision. Fine. Okay, another thing that makes children discontent is when there is lack of, autonomy or lack of control. When practically they cannot make any decision about what they naturally want or desire. When everything they do is what you want them to do. So what I do with my children is we have an itinerary. We have, like I've mentioned before, we have a plan, what we do every day, how we go about it. We have a routine that works for us as a family and as a team. So sometimes, maybe during the holiday or during the weekends, my son can tell me, "Oh, Mom, please, when I'm done with everything I need to do, when I'm done, praying, having a bath, brushing, eating, playing my musical instruments, reading my book, and all that, Mom, please, can I do something else? What can I do?" And I will ask him, "What do you have in mind?" He can say, "Oh, please, can I watch TV? Or can I watch Dr. Binox on TV?" Or he can go, "Please, can I draw? I just want to paint. I want to try something new." I'm like, "Okay, fine, no problem." But remember, we had an open conversation. He said when he is done. So you see the power it gives them to be able to make that decision of what they want to do at the right time. At the right time. Also makes them content. So that takes out rebellion, that takes out, dissatisfaction and unhappiness. Or sometimes they may come and say, "Oh, Mom, please, when I'm done with everything, can we go out to play? Will you be available to take us, out to play?" Those are negotiations, those are things. And then we look into it and see how it works for us. And sometimes, of course, they have their way, as long as what they're having their way for is nothing negative. One of the things that also causes discontent in children is challenging circumstances. Difficult circumstances, like family disruption, something that they're used to, illness, bullying, academic struggles, all these things can cause discontent in a child. Then also emotional and psychological issues like anxiety, depression, low self-esteem. These are things that makes children discontent. Lack of support. If children don't have adequate emotional support, a nurturing environment, positive role models, these things makes them discontent. For example, you give birth to a new child. The child is completely dependent on you. The child cannot stand up, the child cannot, move around, the child cannot tell you my diaper is wet, or I want to be comfortable, or I have a bit of gas in me. If that child doesn't have adequate support, the child cannot be content. That's what leads to children crying and wailing and shouting, and children who are used to, of course, those are expressions to show unhappiness or dissatisfaction in some form, which is discontent. So when babies are used to crying, they don't even bother waiting or giving you a bit of time to get ready. The moment they need anything, they just already somewhere in their brain, because that's what their brain keeps on telling them to do. Since you do not solve their problem immediately, they're having that challenge. So somewhere in their brain, they just go, their cry just goes off all of a sudden immediately. So to get contentment, children need support. Finally, we could say developmental changes. Developmental changes happen to children as they grow. Their hormones change, and how they navigate through these emotions, through these responsibilities, through the expectations can either, lead to some form of contentment or discontentment depending on how their environment responds to them. For example, some boys grow taller faster than some boys, right? And for example, some girls begin to develop bust before some other girls, right? So if your child is not self-confident already, and if your child does not have a good self-esteem, these are things that the child that leads to discontentment within the child. And even as small as they are, they begin to find ways, So I remember when we were in boarding school, they'll tell us that if you do this, your breast will grow faster. If you do this, so some of us will go as far as putting tissue, buying tiny underwears, and then putting tissue in it just so that we can look like our mates, But eventually, at the right time, everything comes together, So Developmental changes also could cause some form of discontent, especially when the child is already having some form of struggles. Let's now talk about helping your child to be content.